I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, January the 7th, 2014. The Associated Press reports that U.S. Ambassador to Israel Dan Shapiro told Israel Radio today that a draft for a framework proposal will be presented to the Israelis and the Palestinians in a few weeks and will include the core issues like security arrangements, borders, and the issue of Jerusalem. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who reportedly is planning to return to Israel next week to continue with his efforts to push along peace negotiations between the two sides, departed the country yesterday after 4 days of meetings with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. The Jerusalem Post reports that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in his address to Likud members yesterday, said that there was no framework agreement yet, but that in such an agreement, which he said will be non-binding, there will be elements that Israel won't like and elements that the Palestinians won't like. Israel's Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon said today that Israel and the Palestinians were not discussing a framework agreement now, but rather terms that would set a framework for peace talks to continue beyond the 9 months initially allotted by Secretary of State Kerry. The Jerusalem Post reports that Israeli officials said yesterday that Kerry is working on a document spelling out America's basic principles for a peace agreement that both sides, with reservations, can agree to follow as a framework for continuing peace talks. Government officials said that if negotiations are successfully extended beyond the 9-month period, which falls sometime in April, then both sides are expected to continue to negotiate based on the American document, even with the understanding that the positions listed in the document are not necessarily ones that the Israelis and the Palestinians accept. 2 separate security incidents were reported in the West Bank yesterday. In the first, Palestinians threw a pipe bomb at the parking lot near Rachel's tomb north of Bethlehem, injuring an Israeli man in the face. He was evacuated to the hospital where he's being treated. In the second, a handmade grenade was thrown towards an IDF base near Bethlehem. No injury or damage was reported there. Israel police and border guards were searching the area for suspects. The Times of Israel reports that the IDF released a group of Israeli settlers who had been detained by Palestinians today. According to French news agency AFP, the group of settlers had entered the Arab village of Kusra today, which is near the West Bank city of Nablus, in an attempt to carry out a price tag attack, protesting the Israeli civil administration's uprooting of a settler olive grove near the West Bank outpost of Esh Kodesh. AFP said the settlers clashed with the Palestinians in the village and were detained by some of them and beaten. They were later reportedly handed to or removed by the IDF. Reuters reports that the Palestinians beat up the settlers, accusing them of having thrown rocks at farmers who were tending their fields. The IDF spokesman's office said it could not confirm the incident, and details remained unclear over who and how many were hurt. Several Jewish groups here in the U.S. are expressing deep concern over the recent questioning by Israel's chief rabbinate of the reputation and status of several Orthodox rabbis in the U.S. Both the Anti-Defamation League and the American Jewish Committee reacted to the rabbinates challenging the status of prominent and long-established Orthodox rabbis, specifically citing Rabbi Avi Weiss, a modern Orthodox rabbi who leads the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, New York. The rabbinate challenged Rabbi Weiss's status, ruling without a hearing that he could not vouch for the Jewishness of American couples who were looking to get married in Israel. ADL National Chair Barry Curtis Lusher and National Director Abe Foxman wrote a letter to Israel's chief Ashkenazi and Sephardi rabbis, David Lau and Yitzchak Yosef, respectively, that the decisions against Weiss and other religious leaders sends, quote, the worst kind of message about religion itself. They wrote that rather than trying to alleviate the tensions that already exist between American Jews and Israel over the treatment of non-Orthodox Jews and their rabbis, this action against Rabbi Weiss and possibly against other respected Orthodox rabbis opens up a further divide. It suggests in the strongest ways that the chief rabbinate is solely determined to have its narrow view of what it means to be Orthodox triumph at the expense of the unity of the Jewish people. The AJC chairman Dov Zakheim and director Stephen Baim issued an open letter to the chief rabbinate, writing that the rabbinate is engaged in an unwarranted attack and meddling, and that such extremist actions only distance American Jewry from Israel, as the chief rabbinate is an official organ of the Jewish state. The AJC wrote such distancing in turn weakens a major pillar upholding the special U.S.-Israel relationship, namely the conviction that a strong American Jewry wishes America to stand by Israel in the face of its enemies. Diminished American Jewish attachment to Israel, they wrote, which actions of this sort severely aggravate, results in weakened American Jewish advocacy on behalf of Israel, thereby undermining the security of the Jewish state. Both groups called on the rabbinate to reverse their decision. An earlier report from the Jerusalem Post suggests that Weiss was perhaps singled out by the rabbinate because of his establishment of Yeshivat Maharat, which is a seminary ordaining women as arbiters of Jewish law, and also for the International Rabbinic Fellowship as an alternative rabbinic association to the Rabbinical Council of America. The U.S. Senate has confirmed Janet Yellen to lead the Federal Reserve. Yellen is the first woman and first Jewish woman to lead the central bank, succeeding Ben Bernanke. The vote of 56-26 yesterday showed strong Democratic support for Yellen, as well as the support of 11 Republican senators. President Obama lauded the bipartisan confirmation. He said Yellen will be a fierce champion who understands that the ultimate goal of economic and financial policy making is to improve the lives, jobs, and standard of living of American workers and their families. Yellen's position as vice chairman of the Fed will now be open, and according to media reports, a top contender to fill it is Stanley Fischer, a former World Bank chief economist who holds both U.S. and Israeli citizenship and who served as governor of the Bank of Israel from 2005 to 2013. Brandeis professor Jonathan Sarna was elected president of the Association for Jewish Studies. Sarna, who is professor of American Jewish history at Brandeis, was named at the association's annual meeting. He is the fourth Brandeis professor to serve in the role, including his father, Nahum Sarna. Sarna, who is also chief historian of the National Museum of American Jewish History in Philadelphia, said of the election, "This is a great honor to be leading an organization that plays an important role in furthering Jewish studies, scholarship, and education." Adding, "On a personal level, it means a great deal to me to be following in my father's footsteps." The AJS was founded at Brandeis in 1969. It focuses on research and teaching in Jewish studies and has close to 1,800 members worldwide. And turning to our Shalom TV programming for tonight, Tuesday, January the 7th, more of our coverage of the recent 100th anniversary gala of the Anti-Defamation League, with tonight's program at 8 honoring former U.S. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta at the gala. And then at 9 on L'chaim, Mark Golub is joined by Fifth Avenue Synagogue's renowned cantor Joseph Malavany. That's tonight here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, January the 7th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.